The sun was barely over the hills when Luke was driving down County Road 12, sipping burnt coffee from a metal thermos. He had hay to deliver, fences to check, and a long list of chores waiting for him, typical rancher life. But that morning felt different. The sky was too quiet, the air too tense, and his heart strangely heavy. As he rounded a bend, he spotted 3 men standing by a pickup near the fence line of an abandoned property. They were clustered around something, moving in quick, nervous motions. Luke slowed down, more out of instinct than curiosity. That's when one of them, Earl McKinley, a rancher known for his temper, turned and shouted, "Keep driving, Luke. Don't look there." But Luke did look. And once he saw it, he couldn't unsee it. Near the fence, trembling in a patch of weeds, was a thin, injured mustang, its legs scraped, ribs showing, and fear shining in its eyes like glass. The men weren't helping it. They were trying to scare it off their land, throwing pebbles, waving sticks, yelling. Luke's jaw tightened. Something about the raw, shaking animal reminded him of the day he found his younger sister hiding behind their barn after a beating from their stepfather decades ago. That same trembling. That same silent plea. Luke parked his truck, stepped out, and walked toward the fence. Earl stomped toward him. "I said don't look there. It's not your problem." Luke didn't raise his voice. "Looks like somebody's gotta make it their problem." The other men muttered under their breaths. Earl crossed his arms, tried to stand taller. "That horse wandered onto McKinley land. We don't need a wild animal tearing through our cattle." Luke glanced again at the mustang. It wasn't tearing through anything. It was barely standing. He exhaled slowly. "Let me help it." Earl laughed, shaking his head. "You're gonna waste your time. And your money. And probably get yourself kicked in the head." Luke shrugged. "Wouldn't be the first time life kicked me." Without waiting for permission, Luke climbed the fence. The men yelled at him, but he kept moving. Step by step. Slow. Gentle. Speaking softly to the terrified animal. "Easy now," he whispered. "Nobody's gonna hurt you today." It took nearly 15 minutes before he was close enough to touch the mustang's neck. The poor creature flinched, then to Luke's surprise, leaned into his hand as if it had finally found an anchor in a storm. Luke felt a lump rise in his throat. Behind him Earl hollered, "Luke, for God's sake. Leave it alone." Luke didn't respond. He slipped his rope around the horse's neck and guided it toward the fence, moving like he'd learned from his father years ago, slow, patient, steady. By the time they reached the open gate, the 3 men were furious. "You can't take that horse," Earl snapped. "It's on my land." Luke met his eyes. "So I'll pay you for the trouble. $50. Earl scoffed. "You think I care about $50? Luke reached into his wallet and peeled off $100. "How about now? And I'll owe you a favor." There was a long, tense pause before Earl snatched the bill. "Fine. But don't come crying when that thing drops dead." Luke didn't answer. He just led the mustang carefully to his truck, whispering soft encouragements. By afternoon, the entire town had heard the story. Some called Luke a fool. Others said he was trying to show everyone up. At the diner, people argued over whether a wild animal was worth the trouble. Rumors spread like dust storms, but Luke didn't care. He had the mustang settled in his small barn, bedded with fresh hay, water, and a blanket. He called the local vet, who arrived shaking her head. "Luke, she's terrified, dehydrated, and in pain. She's gonna need time and patience." "I got both," Luke replied quietly. The vet gave a half smile. "You always do." For the next several days, Luke woke up earlier than usual, just to sit near the horse, reading aloud from old ranch magazines or humming tunes his mother used to sing. At first, the mustang, whom he named Willow, wouldn't let him near. But Luke understood fear. He'd lived with it, swallowed it, and learned to walk beside it. He didn't rush her, and little by little, Willow changed. One morning, she ate from his hand. The next, she nudged his shoulder as he walked by. It was as if trust, once broken, was weaving itself back together one fragile thread at a time, but the town hadn't forgotten. One afternoon, Earl McKinley burst into Luke's yard, furious. "You owe me more than $100. My cattle stampeded that same day. That mustang spooked M." Luke stood firm. "Earl, that had nothing to do with her." Earl jabbed a finger toward him. "You always think you're better. Always poking your nose where it doesn't belong." Luke didn't shout. He didn't even frown. He simply said, "Sometimes doing the right thing looks like poking your nose where it doesn't belong." Earl turned red, then stormed off, muttering curses. After he left, Luke sat beside Willow, stroking her neck. "People get angry when kindness reminds them of something they've forgotten," he whispered. A week later, something unexpected happened. Storm clouds rolled over Cedar Ridge, fierce and fast. A flash flood warning went out. Earl's cattle were grazing near a low creek bed, and the rising water trapped them. Earl's truck got stuck in the mud. He shouted for help, but the road was deserted. Everyone else had hunkered down, everyone except Luke. He saw Earl's signal flare from afar and drove straight into the storm. Mud flew, wind howled, and the rain felt like needles. But Luke pushed through until he reached Earl's stranded truck. "You here to say, 'I told you so'?" Earl yelled over the storm. "No," Luke replied. "I'm here, 'cause no one should face trouble alone." Together they freed the cattle, guiding the panicked herd up the hill while lightning cracked overhead. By the time the storm passed, both men were soaked, shivering, and exhausted. Earl stared at Luke for a long moment before finally whispering, "Why'd you help me? After everything I said?" Luke shrugged. "Kindness doesn't vanish just because someone yells at it." Earl swallowed hard and looked away. The next morning, word spread again, this time not about the angry rancher or the foolish Mustang rescue, but about how Luke had risked his life to help Earl. People looked at him differently. Maybe with more respect. Maybe with more understanding. A few neighbors even came by to offer hay, supplies, or just a kind word. And one afternoon, Earl himself arrived at Luke's door holding a sack of oats. "These are for Willow," he said, awkwardly. "If that's still her name." Luke smiled. "It is." Earl cleared his throat. "She's lookin' better. Healthier. Strong." Luke nodded. "Kindness does that." Earl didn't argue this time. He simply nodded back. Weeks passed, and Willow grew stronger, her coat shining again, her eyes no longer hollow but bright. One crisp morning, Luke opened the gate, and with a gentle nudge, Willow stepped out into the open field. She looked back at him, just once, before running free across the golden grass. Luke felt a tear slip down his cheek. Not from sadness, but from the quiet joy of letting go the right way. Sometimes kindness means holding on, sometimes kindness means setting free, and sometimes kindness changes a whole town without anyone noticing until the moment everything feels different. As life returned to normal in Cedar Ridge, folks began to greet each other a little softer, look out for one another a little more, and stand up for what mattered even when it wasn't easy. Because when one person chooses kindness, it spreads, quietly at first, then fiercely, like a wildfire of compassion, and all because one rancher refused to look away, even when he was told not to look at all. So if you're watching this, remember, kindness may not always be easy, or popular, or convenient. But it is powerful. It can heal wounds, mend friendships, and even change the rhythm of an entire town. Be the one who looks. Be the one who cares. Be the one who keeps kindness alive.